So inside of the model directory again, and I'm talking about the test unit model directory, we're going to create another class. This time let's call it author test. So author test. And this one is also going to extend a lookup model case. And let's add this model instance method, which we are required to add because we are extending this contract here, this abstract class, which has this abstract method requirement obviously within itself. So this time we're going to return new author, and we don't have this class either. So let's go back to app model, create new class. We're going to call it author, and this class will also extend model as the category did, and protected property table, which is going to be authors. And this specific one will have a method called authors, so public function authors, and we simply return this order by name, and we want to call all method on it. Exactly same thing that we did with the category. So probably you can see that we are actually duplicating quite a bit of code here, which is probably a good place to do some refactoring in just a moment. But before we do this, let's just add the doc blocks again. So this table property stores the value of a string type, and for the authors we know already it's going to return the array. And what we're going to give here as a description, the summary, it's going to be what did we give? The category was get all categories, get all authors. There we go. So that's this one. Author test, obviously we need to import this class here now. So use author model. There we go. So that's the one. So now if you run test on this author test, let's just go back, move arrow up, and model now rather than category it's going to be author test, and there we go. All tests also pass because they use exactly same strategy here. The only thing that we are doing different is this, basically running them on a different model, on a different class, but this class contains the same fields in the database. That's why obviously these tests will all work the same way. Okay, so we have author. The next one is going to be a language. So language test, new language test, and again same thing. This one extends lookup model case. Let's quickly add this method. This one will return new language. We don't have this class, so let's quickly create this model. New class language. Class language will extend model again, and a protected property table, which will be languages, which is obviously the table name. And then the languages will have a method called languages, so public function languages, and this one returns the same thing, this order by name, and get me all of the records. And again, let's add doc blocks. String here, languages will return array, and get all languages. So that's language. Let's close this for now. The test now, let's import this language classes. So use language model. There we go. And let's quickly run the test. I'm just going to move it up. Run a test. So this time rather than author test, it's going to be language test. And again, same situation, 3 tests, 7 assertions on the language instance. So we can close this one. Let's close this category test as well, and we can close the category for now. After the category and language, we have location. So let's create a new test for the location. So location test, and it extends lookup model case. Let's add model instance method, return new location. Location class does not exist, so under the model again, location, and it extends model protected table locations and public function locations, and that returns this order by name and all. Okay, let's remove these spaces here, and again dot blocks, string for the table property, array for the locations, get all locations, and we can close this locations class. Let's import it to our test, so use location model, there we go, and let's test it again. Back to terminal, arrow up, and this time we're looking for location test, hit return again, 3 tests, 7 assertions. So location can also be closed, and I think we've done pretty much or nearly all of them. The cover is another one, so cover test, cover test, and again extends lookup model test case, sorry, lookup model case, and it's going to return the instance of new cover. We don't have it yet. Let's create it quickly under the model. I know it's repetitive, but that's what we need to do basically. So cover, and that extends model protected property table, which is going to be covers, public function covers, return this order by name all, and quickly dot blocks, array get all covers. Obviously I'm going quite quick here because I don't want you to get bored, but slow down, obviously pause the video and do it at your own pace. I'm going quickly through this because these things are pretty much the same throughout all of these classes. This is why in just a moment we're going to refactor them all to make sure that the code is a little bit more efficient without repeating ourselves so much. Okay, we've got our cover class done. Let's go back to our cover test. Let's import this cover instance, so use cover model, and let's remove this gap here. Let's quickly go back to the terminal, run our test again. It is covered this time, and it passes. Okay, so if we now just run test on our model directory to basically go through all of these tests, if we hit return, 15 tests, 35 assertions. If we just run PHP unit to run all of the tests, we have 28 tests, 57 assertions, all of them passing. So that's great. Okay, now let's do this refactoring. We can leave our tests because tests are going to stay the same way. But what we want to refactor, and let's close this lookup model case as well. What we want to refactor is this line of code, basically, in these methods. As you can see, the method name reflects the name of the table. If we quickly have a look at the other ones, authors, then we have categories, languages, and we have locations. So what we could probably do is to make use of the name of the table itself in order to dynamically call the given method. But to do this, rather than extending the model, let's create another abstract class which will extend the model, and then all these lookup models basically will extend this abstract class, this new abstract class. So let's create the new class under the model directory and call it, say, lookup model. And this is going to be an abstract class, so abstract. We don't want anyone to be able to instantiate it on its own. And it will extend model class. Okay, so we have access to all these methods that we need for creating, basically retrieving records and so on. Okay, so within this class, I'm going to create protected function, basically a method called all records. And what this method will do is what all these other named methods we're doing, simply return this order by name and then all method on that. So let's quickly add some doc blocks. This time it's going to be more generic. So again, it returns array, but more generic message here. The summary is going to be get all records. And how are we going to utilize it? How can we actually make, let's say, location to use this all records when we're trying to call the method locations? Well, that's quite simple actually. Let's first remove this locations method altogether, and we're only going to keep the property table. Back to our lookup model class, there is the magic method which allows us to override certain behaviors, and the one we want to do to use is called __ call, which is basically triggered when you're trying to access the method on the class that does not physically exist. So let's quickly create this one, override methods, and we're looking for the call. So as you can see, I'm just going to proceed. You don't have to, but I'm going to proceed it with the public keyword because I like to keep things consistent. So public function __ call, which takes two arguments, name and the argument. So basically name of the method that you were trying to call on a given instance of the class, and then arguments which were passed through as arguments to do this method when you were calling it. So first of all, I'm going to check if name does not equal this table. So whatever values associated with the table property, if it does not exist, the name of the method that we're trying to access, what we're going to do. Let's quickly check what happens when we actually calling any method on a given instance of the class, method that does not exist. Let's open our lookup model case again, and inside of the can create and return collection of models, let's just use model, and let's try to call the method non-existent method, for instance, and let's see what this is going to return when we run a test. And let's run a test on class, say, author. Hit return, and what we get is an error. So that's what we need to make sure that we actually returning, throwing rather than returning. Okay, so let's remove this call to non-existent method from within the lookup model case. Let's save it and close it. Back to our lookup model, and what we're going to do here is throw new error, and there we go. Let's just import this class here as well, so it's right at the top. And after this, if it does match the name, basically the name of the method we are trying to call matches the value associated with the table property, then what we want to do is simply return this all records. And we're not going to be passing these arguments because normally you would pass these arguments, but we know this all records won't take any arguments anyway, so we can just ignore this. Okay, let's add the doc blocks here, and what we are going to have for these params, the name is definitely going to be of a string type, so string arguments is going to be of the array type. And then we are also going to give it some summary, call method dynamically, or call, perhaps give it a call all records method dynamically. And I think that's it for this specific class. Let's now save it and we can close it. Let's go back to our location and replace this extends model with lookup model. And if we now try and run the location test, let's just quickly go to terminal, and location is the one we want to run, and there we go. It still passes, as you can see. We obviously don't test for this dynamic method, but it still works obviously by extending this lookup model. Okay, so let's do the same with all the other classes. So we've got location, we can close this one now. Language, let's remove this languages method and extend lookup model class. That should now work exactly the same way. Save it. Category, let's remove this categories method, save it and extend a lookup model. Save it, extend lookup model, remove authors. Let's remove these spaces here as well. Save it. Cover, same situation, covers lookup model, and save it. Let's quickly go through all of them once again. Author, lookup model, that's fine. Category, lookup model. Cover, lookup model. We can actually close this as well. Languages, language, lookup model. Location, lookup model. So it's all It's all working fine. Now, one thing that I would like to also test, now that we're actually testing for specifically for these lookup models, I would like to test this dynamic method. So how can we do it? Let's quickly have a look at the author, for instance. We know that the table name is the property that's protected. So we can't access it from within a test. We can just go to the lookup model and say, okay, model, give me the table, value associated with the table property. But what we can do instead is perhaps add the method that will return it back to us. So let's go back. Rather than lookup model, we may use this method on any other instance of the model. So let's just go back to the model class, and right after the SQL statement, let's just put public function get table name. And this will simply return this table. And let's just add some dog block here. It's going to return a string and get table name, which is exactly what the name of the method is itself. Okay, so now if we save and close this model method, we can close the author as well. And what I'm going to do with this lookup model case, I'm going to add another test right at the bottom. We are going to call it public function can call all records method dynamically. And let's make it a test by adding a test tag. And what I'm going to do inside of this test, first of all, I'm again going to use model equals this model instance, and then I'm going to add model create this lookup data, and I'm going to create 3 records with default data, whatever Faker is going to serve us. And then what I'm going to do is run the assertion, assert count, and I expect 3 records when I'm calling model, and the name of the method I'm going to put in between a curly brackets. I'm using model and the method which we've just added, get table name, followed by a set of brackets after the closing curly bracket to indicate that we're actually calling a method, not a property. And after this, I'm going to put some fallback dynamic method call failed if it was to fail. Okay, let's save it, go back to the terminal, and I'm going to run test on, again, location. Let's do location. So hit return, and all 4 tests seem to be passing. Let's now try and run all of the tests within the model directory. All work fine, and just PHP unit to run all of the tests, and we have 33 tests, 62 assertions. So now we know that this dynamic method call also works as expected. Okay, it's time to move to the next video.